I'd like to say good day to you and welcome to our lectionary Bible study that we have here at Salado United Methodist Church, which is in Salado, Texas, which is about halfway between Waco and Austin on I-35 for those of you watching this from someplace remote or far away. Uh, Today, our text, as you can see from the board, is Deuteronomy 14:22 through 29. And in this segment, which it will come to the World Wide Web on Tuesday, I want to do kind of a general overview of the book of Deuteronomy. And then later in the week, I would like to specifically take this text and talk about it, it's a fairly straightforward text, and I don't anticipate either one of our studies today as being too long, but hey, you never know. Uh, Deuteronomy is the fifth book in the Pentateuch, or the fifth book in the Hebrew Bible. It follows Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and then we have Deuteronomy. The next book after that is the book of Joshua. And so the word Deuteronomy basically means second law. And in one way, you could describe the book of Deuteronomy as a bunch of laws, or really it's a long speech or sermon that Moses gives to the children of Israel. It's a book that not only concludes the Pentateuch and it tells of Moses' death, but it also helps prepare us for Moses' preparation for the children of Israel to go across the Jordan River and enter the land of promise. And the new leader, of course, will be Joshua. And we see some about Joshua in the book of Deuteronomy. And then the next book of the Hebrew Bible, or the Old Testament, is the book of Joshua, which talks about the people going into the promised land. Deuteronomy tells a lot about the wilderness experience of the people, and it tells us about their preparation as they try to go across the Jordan River and enter into the land flowing with milk and honey, as we're told in Exodus. It talks a lot about the transition of the authoritative leadership of Moses, which is then handed over to Joshua. I would just say parenthetically that perhaps all of us could learn a little bit about the transition of leadership as we are fixing to go through in the next 6 months in the United States. Maybe there are some clues in Deuteronomy to tell us how we can do that in the most efficient and compassionate way. There are there is a section of the Hebrew scriptures beginning with Deuteronomy and ending with Second Kings that is what we call the Deuteronomic theology, and it's a certain sort of point of view that is theological and tries to help Israel understand what kind of things happen to them. One of the features of the Deuteronomic theology is the idea that if Israel would have been more faithful to Yahweh, then it would have not had to go through things like the Assyrian conquest, the Babylonian exile, and so forth. And so this Deuteronomic theology plays out in the book of Deuteronomy, obviously, but also Joshua, Judges, 1st and 2nd Samuel, and 1st and 2nd Kings. And if you know the Hebrew Bible at all, you know that that is a pretty wide swath. It is a big chunk of biblical material that is all under the influence of the Deuteronomists, which is one that says, if one does well, God will prosper you. If you break covenant with Yahweh in several ways, then you will be punished and reap the rewards of that. What's interesting is that Jesus regularly quotes the book of Deuteronomy, and compared to many of the books of the Bible, Deuteronomy casts one of the longest shadows across the whole Bible. Its influence is very pronounced. As I started to say, Jesus quotes from Deuteronomy, especially in the book of Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew, in many, many places. And so it has a prominence that probably outweighs the influence of, say, some other books like Numbers or Leviticus, for example. If you were to look at the book of Deuteronomy, you would notice that it is divided into three major sections. The first one is sort of a recounting or a retelling of what happens to the children of Israel as they begin the events of the Exodus. And so there's kind of a recap of the Exodus, you might say. A second thing that happens here is the giving of the law is taken care of. As some of you may know, the Ten Commandments or the Decalogue is given in Exodus 20. But if you look very carefully at the book of Deuteronomy, you will notice that it's also told about in Deuteronomy 5. Essentially, the commandments are exactly the same, but Deuteronomy gives a little bit more commentary as to why certain laws are made the way that they are made. And then after retelling the Exodus, after telling about the giving of the law, the third thing that we see, the third division of Deuteronomy, is a call to Israel to renew its covenant with God. The last thing that I'm going to tell you this morning, and I alluded to it a little bit, is that there is what is called a Deuteronomic theology in the Hebrew Bible. And one of the ways that you can see it is through if-then statements. If Israel does such and such, then Israel will prosper. Or if Israel does not do such and such, then Israel will suffer. That is called the Deuteronomic theology. It's one way to see it. And sometimes the if-then is implied in the text, but often it's right there. If, and then a statement, and then a then statement. So you have the premise, and then you have the conclusion. And a lot of the way that the book is written in that particular form. And you can see that form in Joshua, Judges, 1st and 2nd Samuel, and 1st and 2nd Kings too, because they are held under the sway of this particular theology, which is written by the Deuteronomists. So I'd like to thank you today for being with us, and I look forward to visiting with you later, perhaps this week, perhaps next week.